Welcome, everybody. I'm Rick DiClemente with Astrology Unplugged. Tonight, we take a night off of astrology and welcome for our third time our guest, Linda Varos. I'll be bringing her out in just a second. I wanted to mention a few things first. We do have guests about once every month or every two on different related subjects. Tonight, we're going to talk about Reiki, and I think it's very important that we do. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And she should be very flattered because I don't want just anybody. And there are all kind of people that say they teach Reiki. And there's all kind of people that are Reiki masters. And if I got a pet peeve, it's with all the people saying that they're Reiki masters. And what I've learned is a couple of things. And it goes back to the 60s and what Ram Dass called material spirituality. And it's an ego trip, except a normal ego trip. It's an ego trip of being a healer. And there are all kind of people that are walking around doing things and claiming things, and they really aren't at a point where they should be. It's a real hard thing to master. I'm sure Linda will tell us a lot about it. But I mean, in most cases, I'm sure Reiki's absolutely safe. But there are some things I want to talk about. Anyhow, to introduce you with Linda, Linda could go on forever with her background because she's just done so many things. But I wanted to just give you a brief synopsis of what Linda's all about. She's a clairvoyant medium. She's a creative mystic. She's a Reiki master teacher. At age 7, she had an ecstatic experience in nature, and she was shown the various energy fields of nature in full movement. At age 8, she had a near-death experience, after which spirit communication became common. In 2001, while traveling, a bolt of lightning came down in front of her car and split in two in front of the hood. And this led several hours later to the point where she had mediumship open up for her. She is a Reiki master teacher. She's a really good one. And she continues to teach Reiki, facilitate energy healing, and provide Reiki and guidance to those who are seeking life transformation. Throughout the evening, I'll be displaying a graphic that gives you her connection details in case you want to contact her. And with that, I want to welcome you, Linda Varos.
Thank you, Rick DiClemente. I'm so excited to be here again. I just love to comment that you do have a wonderful audience. I've gotten to know a number of your groups here and the group here members, and everybody's just so awesome and joy-filled. And
yeah, it's a great group. And about 15 years ago, Linda she sponsored a fairy festival, and she was the queen, and I was the queen's astromancer, which is a really neat name, astromancer. So I walked around with a robe and the staff and all that, and we had a little parade, and it was just a lot of fun. Welcome, Linda. I'm so glad to have you for so many reasons. The main reason is everybody and their brother's a Reiki master now, and I just don't believe it. Okay? And I know that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And in the old days, say 20 years ago, I used to kind of poo-poo it. I thought, yeah, this and that, because I've had so many energy treatments. But one day, somebody knocked my socks off. And I got 3 little stories I'll be adding later, but it ain't nothing to mess with, and it is really powerful. So I give the floor to you. Please tell us all about Reiki, Linda.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Well, I want to start by saying how I got into Reiki, and then I'll tell you a little bit, I'll explain what Reiki is. It's important that you understand the history. Can you hear me okay? Okay. It's important that you understand the history. And I'll explain why I want to get into that, but it's a key element. And so I myself was introduced to, I was invited to become attuned at Reiki 1. I've been thinking about it. I'd heard about it. This was back in 2002. And the invitation came from someone who knew that the Cancer Caring Center of Pittsburgh was going to be offering a weekend of free Reiki training for anybody who wanted to become a Reiki, enter at the Reiki 1 level. And it was, one of those sort of synchronicity things, because I've been thinking about it and suddenly the opportunity came out of the blue. So of course I took advantage of that. And the people at the Cancer Caring Center had said that they didn't care if you volunteered. Once you learned, once you became attuned, they just felt that it was such a powerful help that they wanted more Reiki practitioners out in the world. Now, back in 2002, that's a big deal because, the medical field has taken forever to be open to energy healing. Although I think around 2000, some of the hospitals did begin to take Reiki volunteers. And Allegheny General Hospital, I believe, was the first one here in Pittsburgh that they actually had a volunteer team come on. So in any case, I actually, when I initially heard about it, I thought maybe I could do this myself. I could open myself up to it because I was already working with my guides and having all these experiences. And it didn't work. And so after I was attuned, when I went home, and I hit the light switch, I blew a bulb. And I went in the next room and I hit the light switch and I blew a bulb. And it happened in 3 rooms. And I thought I better quit hitting the light switches. So I had my daughter turn the lights on the rest of the house.
It's very Aquarian, by the way.
Yeah, you have said that. But I will tell you that other people who've been attuned have had a very similar experience. And when I was attuned at level 2, I had a problem with the electrical system in my car. And, there is definitely a channel that opens when you are attuned. And then that was in 2002. And then in 2004, I went to school to become a licensed massage therapist. So that gave me the opportunity to really bring Reiki into a hands-on practice, helping people. And I owned my own wellness facility for a while when I graduated there. And I was divorced and I had 3 children to finish raising on my own and no health care. And I kind of felt desperate that I needed to close my facility and work somewhere where I had insurance. And I did that at UPMC, which was a nightmare for me. And the whole time I was there, I kept asking, put me somewhere else. And I got really desperate one day. And I just said, okay, I'm handing everything over because I can't figure out where I'm supposed to be. And I'm so stressed out. So if you could sort of put me where you want me in, and let me know in 3 days, then I'll hold off for 3 days, right? And so, but I did put down my requirements. I didn't say I want to be this or I want to be that. What I said was I would like my work element to let me be, creative, be kind of schedule myself. I mean, I really put out there what I wanted, and they were things that they would never be in one job description. It just wouldn't happen, right? And 3 days later, and during those 3 days, because I'm such a worrier, every time my human mind would jump in and have me worrying, I would have to talk to myself and say, oh, no, I said, I promised I was going to wait 3 days. And so I would go, la, 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 and distract myself. And that would keep me in the place of trust. Because I felt like that was really crucial to get, having it show up in 3 days. So 3 days come around and my phone rings and somebody that I hadn't spoken to in a while out of the blue calls and says, I'm leaving my position with hospice. And I think that you would be wonderful. Would you be interested in interviewing for the job? I can tell you that I never in a million years would have taken that position or thought about working with hospice because I'm so compassionate that just the thought of being with people that are dying was an overwhelming thought for me. That I would never have thought of that. But while I was in the hospital there working in that job in a short window of 8 months, my mother, who was 96, came in and within a couple of days, she was in the hospital. and she passed away there, and I got to sit at her side as she passed, and it was as close as I was to my mother. It was a shocking experience for me that this was the most beautiful thing, one of the most beautiful things I ever experienced in my life, passing. There was something going on there, and it's hard to describe, but it shifted my mindset about death and dying. So when this call came in, several months later, when I was, had put that out there, can you tell me in 3 days? I absolutely said yes. And I went and interviewed, and it was a board. They interviewed me, they hired me on the spot. They offered me more money than I asked for. And the job had every single thing that I had mentioned that I wanted in one job, which I could not believe. So I was providing massage and Reiki to hospice patients and their caregivers, and also doing aromatherapy programs at facilities, and recruiting and training volunteers, and supporting the marketing team. I mean, it had all these aspects to it, which was perfect for me. Variety. I'm Aquarian. I need variety. So anyway, I just want to give you that background because I worked with hospice patients 5 days a week. I was on 2 medical teams. I did that for 6 years, and I had amazing experiences, and it was probably the most powerful blessed period of my life, those 6 years.
That's the same time I met you.
Let's see, when was that? That was
You were at the light ring.
2006, 2007. Yeah, 2006, right?
I knocked on your door and said, hello.
So anyway, I do have, and then I also trained, I became the trainer for, it was the second largest hospice agency in the United States. And I was the trainer for them nationally after I was there about 4 years when that happened. So, and then I also have taught at the Pittsburgh School of Massage in the continuing education department, Reiki for medical professionals. So I've really had my hand in it on a variety of aspects. So I want to jump over now to a little bit about, Reiki itself. So the word Reiki is Japanese, and it means vital soul energy or universal life force energy. It is a form of hands-on energy healing, gentle hands-on energy healing, and it has a fascinating history. And so I'm going to refer to my notes a little bit because it's so, I don't want to say it's convoluted, but it's a very complex history, but it's important that you know it. So I'm going to try my best to kind of follow the timeline, and I think that will allow me to shorten it a little bit. The person who came up with the name Reiki, although it's an old term, its history goes back more than 2,500 years. And in the 1800s, about the mid 1800s, there's a gentleman named Mikao Usui who became a doctor and a theology, had a PhD in theology, and he was a Christian minister. He'd been raised by, at the time where there was a lot of conversion happening in Japan. And he was the principal at Kyoto University teaching theology. And I think at that point he was probably maybe middle-aged or coming on to middle age. But what happened was a lot of his students were asking how Jesus was able to heal and would he be able to teach them? Well, he didn't have an answer. And it really became a big puzzle for him because he knew that Jesus had said, you too can do this. If you believe, you too can do this. And so it became a passion. He couldn't let go of it. And he started asking the people in the Christian community in Japan, well, how did Jesus heal? Where's it written down that says, the formula basically for how he healed? And they said, well, there's really nothing written here. There's nothing here in Japan written about that. So he went to Chicago. He came to the United States, went to the University of Chicago. That's where he got his PhD in theology. He was there for 7 years and found out that too in the United States that they believed that there was absolutely no recorded evidence about the healing. But there were referrals to Buddhism. And he also traveled to India later, and then he went to Tibet, and then he came back to Japan, and where he moved into a Zen monastery. And there he found, and I'm really shortening the story, but there he found, he also learned to read Sanskrit when he was at the University of Chicago. So he started going through all these documents, these Sanskrit Buddhist writings and everything at the monastery. And one day he came upon this document that was in the ancient documents, it was 2,500 years old. He was able to decipher it, and it had this formula that Jesus used for healing. Now there's a long history in Buddhism and in India that, and in Tibet, with written documents that Jesus lived in India, that when the 3 wise men came, that, they were waiting for him because it was written, and they took he and his family back to live in India in a Buddhist, because the Essenes were actually followed some of the Buddhist principles, okay, and the Essene Christians. And so it's a very complex history. But in any case, he found this document. He understood that this was the formula, but what was missing was how to implement it and how to take it forward, and how do you bring this into yourself? How do you do this? And so he felt that maybe he needed to go on a spiritual journey to do that. And he took himself to the top of a mountain in the Kyoto area there, which people would often go on, like Native Americans do, a vision quest. So where, they go off and they don't eat, they're only drinking water, and they pray and they wait for, wisdom to come to them. Well, he did this. He went to the top of the mountain and he was up there for 21 days. And he counted the 21 days down by a pile of stones, 21 stones. He did not eat. He only prayed. He asked for the information to come to him every day. That's what he did. And every day he would remove a stone. And as I was told by my Reiki master, that he believed, he knows that you can't go without food more than 21 days. At that point, the body dies. And so it was the 20th day, and he thought he was going to die the next day. But he woke up the next morning, which surprised him, and he went to stand up, and all of a sudden these beams of light started coming at him from the sun. He was fearful, but then he decided that he had to just stand there and let them hit him. And when they did, they came in each one came and they had a symbol in them, and they went in through his third eye, where all the information about that symbol was embedded into him. And this was his attunement to Reiki. This is when he took on the ability to heal, where the channel was open and the information for how to share, how to heal, and how to teach was embedded in him. And so on his way down the mountain, he had 4 miracles. And, what we consider miracles would be bigger than, I think, what some of them were. He injured his toe, tore some of the skin, whatever, on the way down. And he sat down and put his hands on his foot, just as you would do naturally without giving it much thought. And his toe was healed. And then when he went down to the base of the mountain, there was a little a restaurant or, a cabin, a resting place with food that the travelers will go into. And he went in there, and he just ordered a big meal, and he ate it all without any thought that he hadn't eaten for 21 days, and it only had water, which is a very bad idea, apparently. but it didn't bother him. It didn't affect him. So they consider that the second miracle. And then the third one was the innkeeper had a toothache, and he went and put his hands on her face, and her toothache was healed. It went away, her tooth was healed. And then when he went back to the monastery, he found that the director was in bed, crippled with arthritis, and he treated him and he was cured. And so those were the 4 miracles. So he decided that what he needed to do was go out into the world and make his way where all the beggars, because at that time, and this was by this time, or the early 1900s to looking at my timeline here. I guess the very early 1900s. And there were a lot of beggars, people that had one limb, they couldn't walk, or open wounds that wouldn't heal, that sort of thing. And so anyway, he was healing people, living amongst these people, traveling around in the poor areas. And what was happening was he found out, this was over a 2-year period, he thought these people were healed. Now they're going to go back out into society and become active members of society, and they're going to get a job, they're going to work. But the same people were coming back like a year later because they were upset that they had to go work, that they couldn't make money by begging anymore. And then he felt that it was because he was giving them the healing without them having to work for it. And that there should be some remuneration, there should be some payment for it. And so this translated into when you become attuned to Reiki, it became very expensive. And that it was kind of what happened based on this belief and what happened with him. But he did continue to travel then, and he went around speaking about it and healing people around the countryside. And at that point, around 1925, he met Churo Hayashi, and Mr. Hayashi was a retired naval military person. He was 47 years old. And Dr. Utsui eventually made him his first Reiki master. Then what happened was they worked together. Eventually they go back into Kyoto. They open a clinic where they're seeing people. And there were many people that were healed. And they would stay in the clinic until they were healed. So they might need 4 or 5 treatments before they would be cured. And Dr. Utsui did not have a pattern with the way he handled the Reiki. We now follow a pattern, okay? But what he did was he let his hands lead him. So if you take massage, for example, one of the things they teach you in massage is let your hands lead the way. Let your hands tell you where the client needs the most work. With Reiki, it's the same thing, okay? And so this is the way Dr. Utsui practiced Reiki. He would go right to the wounded area and work on that, which is what Jesus would have done, which is what Buddha would have done. And then he would work on healing the whole body, because it's about healing the soul. It's about healing the spirit, okay? So we might be able to put our hands on someone and work with relieving their pain, a cancer victim, for example, who can't have massage but they're experiencing a lot of pain. The Reiki energy would come through the hands of the Reiki practitioner. Your hands get very warm, the energy pours through, and that energy and the heat itself is what the client receives. And as well as I do, I'm sure all of you know this, that a lot of people just want that one thing healed. They don't want to know. They're not ready to look at what really the deeper cause is. Okay. But there's always a deeper cause of whatever's going on. And so that's why I say, I work with people that really are seekers. They're people that are ready to explore how their life could be more expanded. And they're willing to look at themselves and really try to heal at a deeper level. The Buddhists and Buddhism is based on separating from the body, separating from human attachment, and just being with spirit. But, here we are living in this reality, right? And we can't really go to a monastery for 20 years and just meditate on separation. So when it doesn't matter though. If we're helping a client and it helps their pain in that moment, and that's all they need right then, that's fine. But there are also people that we can work with that who are ready to go deeper, you know, and are willing to spend time over a period of time to try to get to the deeper source of that. Okay, I got off track a little bit, but I'm giving you a little bit of how it works, blended in with the time frame. Whenever Dr. Rusui passed away, Mr. Hayashi maintained the clinic for a good number of years, maybe 30, 35, 40 years. In that whole time with all the people that he treated, he only attuned, I think, 16 people to be Reiki masters. Okay, so this wasn't everybody and their mother becomes a Reiki master, because to become a Reiki master, you really have to be serious about wanting to help people heal. That I know is a sticking point, because I think it is for everybody who's worked hard. I know people who paid $10,000 and spent 10 years to get their master level. And you've got people on the internet now saying you can download this and, you know, and pay for it. You get the certification and I'll attune you from here and you're good to go. And you can go out and start treating people with Reiki. And, you know, it doesn't work that way. Okay. So in any case, in 1935, a woman named, and these are Japanese names, so I have to, Hawaii Takata, Mrs. Takata. I always take the first name away, Mr. or Mrs. A lot of people do that. Mrs. Takata, she was a widow who had 2 children and had a tremendous amount of health issues. And her multiple issues got so bad that if she didn't have surgery, she would have died. So she was able to travel to Tokyo for surgery, but she was afraid because they told her she could die in surgery. And when she was there the night before surgery in the hospital, a voice woke her up and said to her, "You don't need the surgery. You don't need the surgery." So in the morning, when they were prepping for surgery, she got up and she went to the doctor and she said, "I don't want the surgery. What else can I do?" And he said, "If you're willing to stay in Japan, there's a clinic you can go to and you can stay there and they can work on you." And that was with Mr. Hayashi. Okay. So Mrs. Takata stayed with Mr. Hayashi. She was attuned to level 1. She helped work with other patients there. And then she did come back to Hawaii. He traveled to Hawaii, attuned her to level 2, and then attuned her to level 3 and made her his successor. And she became a massage therapist and opened her own clinic because she felt that in order to do it legally in the United States, she really needed to have the massage therapy for the hands-on kind of protection to be able to incorporate the Reiki as well. And she developed the formula and the steps of where you put your hands and in what process that we follow today. However, and it's important, there is a lineage. And the reason I went through the list and the timing is because it's important that when you're attuned to Reiki, that you know what your lineage is. Because the closer you are in the lineage, the less chance there is of it being that the information or content is sort of bastardized, right? And any form now that is out there on the internet that has the word Reiki with it, it has been an offshoot from Dr. Rusui, okay, and has in some way had something added to it. Now that doesn't mean it's bad, okay? There was I know a nurse who developed healing touch therapy.
Right.
And she developed it, I believe, I don't know this for sure, but I believe because she's a nurse and she wanted the medical profession to accept the ability to train people to come in and actually treat patients with Reiki. And how else can you do that if you can't make it acceptable to the FDA, acceptable to the medical profession. So she herself was somebody who taught, and she was able to turn it into a CEU sort of a course. But I will say, lots of hours and a lot of money to get certified with, but she doesn't use the term Reiki. However, the intentions, I feel, because it's in the medical profession, the intentions, I believe, would be right. And that's what matters. Are the intentions proper? If you're using Reiki, are you properly attuned to it? Maybe not. Okay, maybe that channel isn't properly open, but I believe if your heart is open and you're using the term Reiki, I can't judge. I'm not in a position to judge those. But I will say that I feel really honored that I was invited in when I was, because my Reiki master was 5 people away from Dr. Utsui, and I'm 6. So that means that anyone that I teach is number 7 away from Dr. Usui. And to me, that I feel very honored by that. And I feel blessed to be able to pass that lineage on to other people. So I can get into a little bit more of my experience, but maybe I should stop at this point for questions.
No, we're gonna go into different things here yet. Thank you so far. I wanted to mention a couple of things about what you said. Have you ever heard of a woman named Donna Eden? Donna is one of the most powerful and knowledgeable healers in the world. She's American, and I met her when she came to Pittsburgh. We became very good friends about 15 years ago. She is a phenomenal healer. She's born almost the same day as Bobby Fischer. Her chart's almost identical to Bobby Fischer's, which is really intriguing astrologically. Well, Donna got MS at age 30, was given 2 to 3 years to live. She laughed. She said, I'll take care of it. She got heavily into helping touch, what you're talking about, and these things that the nurses were learning. She dug deep into all this and into Reiki and all these different things. And since then, she's got a book this thick. She's developed so many energy types of healing that she's near 80 and she's in perfect, vibrant health.
Yeah.
Well, I met her about 15 years ago, and I've had MS for 47 years or something. And she saw me, and we became just very attached to each other. Very warm person. She said, I'm going to heal you. She said, I promise. So I thought it was kind of silly thing to promise somebody. And it ended up being, when I started to take her up on it, that her husband was so defensive of her because he had to protect her. She was just open soul to everybody. So it was understandable. He had to protect her time and her energy. So when it came down to actually getting time with her, I only got one session with her, which is totally understandable. But the point is, she told me that people with MS have too much light. They have too much light, and therefore giving them most of the Reiki is toxic to them. You're giving them light when there's already too much. So fast forward, and I am in the ICU undergoing heavy duty operation 10 years ago. And I'm starting to come out of it. I'm spending a week in ICU. And this woman, who's a friend of a friend, she comes in, and I'm just like, pretty weak. She insists on doing Reiki on me. And I'm just like, pretty much out of it. And so this woman was actually a danger to me because she wanted to show off her Reiki abilities. And she started doing Reiki to me and all this and that. Luckily, nothing happened, but it just shows you how she was a danger to me. I told Donna Eden about it. She said, no, this could have really harmed you. But anyhow, I wanted to just point out that side of it because it is a marvelously healing thing. And I will say one more thing about her and save my other story till later. I went to meet her at Virginia Beach, and I was in a hotel. We had the oak table up for healing, and she was going to do a session on me. And I'm going to tell you the truth. This woman can see 12 layers of energy inside the body. She can go back to a certain incarnation. She can see it and describe it by looking at you. She goes out there, Pisces. She goes out there. When she was working atop me, I'm laying on this oak table, working table, massage table, and she's looking down at me. She's working with her hands, etc. Her eyes became totally metallic silver.
What?
The whole eyeball, not just the iris, the whole entire eye was metallic silver. She was looking out at the ocean and watching the dolphins and working on me. I mean, this woman, you just know something's going on with the Reiki world. And when I left her, I felt a whole lot better. Anyhow, I'll get to the second story later, but that was to show you that Reiki has got to be respected, like Linda's talking about. And that's why Linda's here and not some other Reiki master. Go ahead, dear. Tell us about what you do with people, what you've experienced, what is common, etc., etc.
Okay. Wow, Rick, that's quite a story though, but I am familiar
Amazing.
with Donna. And actually I've seen her do, where she shows you to brush off. That's a Reiki move.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm
so
sure they're
to
very
clear-
similar. Yeah.
yeah, clear your energy after you work with someone. Although Reiki's, one of the precepts of Reiki is that you do no harm. Reiki will,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
In
I will
in
say,
my case, it was somebody with the wrong intention. They didn't have the right intention.
yeah, right. Well, yeah,
Which is what
right,
which
yeah.
is what you said.
Driven, yes, right. Well, and that is true. Because and this is where I have a little bit of an issue with people saying that they're a healer, a Reiki healer. I feel like I'm a Reiki facilitator. Now, I understand why they say healer because they want to get the information across in that one sentence that this is a healing practice. Okay. But they're really not the healer. It's the client that's the healer. You are opening yourself up to that channel. And, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the tarot deck, but the magician in the tarot deck is the most beautiful representation of a Reiki practitioner who is doing it in the right mind. Because in the tarot deck, the magician has one hand to the heavens, one hand pointing to the earth, and a table in front of him with all these tools on it. And the tools are really, the tools are the Reiki, the knowledge and understanding and the attunements of Reiki, and of course the opening yourself to heaven and then bringing it down to earth is what the channel is. And so you're not the healer, you are the channel. You are opening, you are allowing yourself, you are providing a conduit for healing, which is why whenever I begin a session with a client, I always have them, I ask them questions and we establish what their intention is. Where do they want that energy to go to help them? Now, there's also layers beyond that, but if they're willing to allow the Reiki masters who are, the ascended masters who also come in and work with you once you're at the master level, you also connect with the ascended masters in the Reiki lineage. And so, I've actually seen them standing around the table. I've seen them doing psychic surgery on people when I'm working on them. I did not have that experience before I went to and I took 8 years before I went to my master's because I didn't feel I was ready, even though I worked in it all.
8 years before you what?
Before I went to my master's level. And so, anyway, I got off track. I do that to myself. Oh yeah. So I feel like I don't know. I wish there was another way to describe being a Reiki facilitator without saying healer. I haven't really come up with it other than the word facilitating, but that's about where we're at.
Well, let me ask you something here. Now, you hear all the time about healers saying, I'm the conduit and God works through me, and my intention is to heal this person. Now, you're telling me that with the Reiki tools and with the Reiki training, that somewhere in the middle of all this happening, you're actually changing gears and saying, oh, no, I need to use this tool. I need to use this tool. And you're guided towards using this tool versus that one. How does that work?
Because guided is the word. You just said it right there. I also use crystals in the room around the client. I've used crystals since I used to dig them up when I was a kid. So that's been something that's been part of my personality. And I know that they amplify energy. Crystals amplify energy. We use them for radio. We use them for our watches. The crystals are amazing elements. So I bring them in. And that certainly is not part of the Dr. Utsui's lineage, but that is something that I personally use as an adjunct in my sessions. But, and I'm guided to do that. And I will choose those because I meditate on what the client is really coming in for or what their deeper needs may be. And I'm asked to be shown which stones to use to sit around in what position around the client who's then on the table. So I can put them around them or I can line them on the client itself, depends on what I'm guided to do. I might be bending the energy waves. Yeah, my intention is to back up what the client wants, but I also ask that they receive what would be for their highest good. And if it is for their highest good that they can have full healing, to please let that be implemented. So that's, I'm not saying do this, do that with the energy, right? I'm not getting in the way of the energy. And I think when people's egos are involved, their mind gets in the way of the energy.
Well, I have to confirm that I've had minor Reiki treatments where I felt minor things happen, and I've had other people work on me, which is unbelievable. So it's real clear to me. It depends on that person's heart, that person's strength, that person's surrender, that person's intent.
Mm-hmm.
But the one who really knocked my socks off, you could tell because this person always talks about God every day. Every day he's talking about God. Somebody's asking one of the questions here to you. You listening on, watching on YouTube, we can chat with each other and you don't see those messages. So I'm going to forward that on. Does healing, well, John asked, does healing always happen?
Not that I know of, but I believe that there's elements and layers of healing that occur. And quite often people, does it happen immediately? I have had people tell me it happens immediately. I've had, I do a lot of remote work as well, which you begin to do at the second level of Reiki. The master level is the third level. And remote or distance Reiki. I've had people. I had a friend actually who was very, very sick with infected lungs and sinus and tremendous amount of 3 different antibiotics. Nothing was working. She called me out of desperation one evening, 11 o'clock at night. I performed, I did Reiki for her, sent her Reiki. And when she woke up in the morning, everything was cleared. Like her lungs were cleared, sinuses were cleared. It was all gone. Now, did the medication kick in during the night all of a sudden? I don't know. I believe it was the Reiki, and so did she, because she said it was so totally clear that she couldn't think that it would have been, anything else. I've had another interesting experience with a client on the table. It was a well-known person, a television personality. So I was a little nervous about treating them anyway. And because I hadn't met them before they came to me, and so, you're wanting to like not mess up anything, right? And but this person was a first for me because she had an unwinding on the table. And I had never experienced that at that point. And an unwinding is like a person releases all of this tension and energy that they've been holding for years. And it spirals up the spine and comes out their crown chakra. And so all of a sudden, it was a very peaceful, wonderful Reiki session. And all of a sudden, the upper part of her body starts literally flinging back and forth wildly on the table. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm giving her a stroke. Someone's having a stroke, right? And just then, I guess because I was worried about it, this like voice comes out of her that was almost like it was disconnected from the body at a completely different rate of speed, because this was rapid flinging that was happening. And she was like, I don't know what's happening right now, but it feels wonderful. And it was just like a different speed than what her body was going at. And after that, she just calmed down. And she walked out of there and she said, oh my God, I've just never experienced anything like that in my life. And I feel like a different person. And, that was quite an astounding thing. And also with hospice patients, I covered 7 counties over those 6 years, patients in 7 counties, not just the hospice patients, but in their homes, the caregivers as well, in hospitals and facilities. And when a person would go into what they call terminal agitation, that happens whenever they're just about getting ready to pass away, and they know it. Okay, on a subconscious level, they know it, and they become frightened. And so the RNs are giving their pain medication, but the people aren't calming down. The medication's not working. And so the nurses would then call me and say, we've got somebody with terminal agitation. I have to leave the patient. Can you come in? And so I would go wherever, and I would walk in, they'd be by themselves. They would be very agitated. Sometimes their eyes would be closed. Sometimes they'd be staring. It would just be like really agitated. And I would tell you, within a minute of putting my hands on them, they would take a deep breath and exhale and calm down. And by the time I'm done with the session, the person is just so completely, incredibly relaxed and calm and sleeping. But I would know they're going to pass soon. And honestly, almost within 45 minutes to an hour, I would get a call and say, thank you so much for going in there. It passed peacefully. I started to feel like the Grim Reaper. I'm like, I don't want to call me in, I don't want to be responsible,
Okay.
But then I realized that what a blessing it was to be able to get them to a place of peace so that they could cross. Which took me back to the episode with my mother and me being in the hospital, why I ended up in that horrible job when my mother was brought in, because I was with her when she crossed and I was praying out loud and holding her. And I feel like there was something similar happening there, with her. So, yeah, amazing things can happen. I actually had a client who has been on medication 3 times a day for narcolepsy. And after her first treatment, she went down to 1 time a day medication because she didn't need it. She wasn't using it at all. And she has remained a long-term client, wonderful, and become a wonderful friend. The same way with a woman who was one of the founders of George Washington University Hospital Integrated Medicine Center, and has her own wellness practice as well. But she's one of the founders of that center at George Washington University, and she has been a intuitive client of mine, a clairvoyant reading client of mine for many years, and has sent me many, many clients. And in fact, then I became, when her mother was who lived in Pittsburgh, became ill with cancer, and I went in weekly and provided Reiki to her mother every week until her passing. So it is all it's all interconnected. Whatever you feel called to do, or however you may be able to call Reiki into your life, I feel, Reiki practitioners are supposed to be doing Reiki on themselves, really every day. But
We're seeing the same principles with primal scream. You're seeing it with meditation. You're seeing with rebirthing. You're seeing with breathing exercises. We're constantly doing all these different techniques to get this out of the way.
right.
Because spirit born us, spirit makes we don't keep our heart beating, something does, right? And it's
Right.
working through us. And the more we get out of the way and let it happen, the better. And the Reiki seems much healthier way. John asked you, I got several questions for you. John asked you, do you feel the energy in your hands?
Oh yeah, yes.
That'd be yes.
Yeah. In fact, I've had people say to me, "Oh my God, you have hot rocks in your hands." But when they're on the table and they haven't experienced Reiki before, because you heat up so much, the energy comes through your palms, and you heat up so much. And the thing that I can relate it to, I mean, if you feel compassion for somebody, your hands start vibrating, the heat comes through immediately. You don't need to be at the point where you're ready to provide Reiki to someone. It becomes like a trigger. The minute your heart becomes involved, the minute you become compassionate in your heart, you get the Reiki energy starting to channel through your hands. That's why I feel that it's really important for people that are empaths to become attuned to Reiki 1, because they're taking on everything and anything. They're highly sensitive.
Right.
With Reiki, they will learn to go into their heart, to open themselves as a channel to Reiki energy. And when they're feeling compassionate towards others, they have a way to channel that out by healing. I think that's a very powerful thing for empaths to do.
Okay, you got another question. Have you seen where people who need Reiki have had their own energy interfering with electronics around them, like a Mercury retrograde type of energy?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, let me run this past you, because this is going to stimulate some kind of talk here. I have a friend who's a fabulous Reiki person. And I went to him about 15 years ago one day. I had a bad headache. And he put me in a chair, put his hands on my feet, put his hands on my shoulder, put his hands near my head. And his intention's really powerful, because he's just really a strong emotional person. And that was it. And I left. And when I'm driving away in the car, I started to feel a little bit relief in my headache. And I'm saying to myself, well, this Reiki's okay, but it wasn't that dramatic. And within a minute or two driving down the road, it was like another entity entered my head. It was like the Rick I know was over here. And this huge astronomical force just entered me, just like you see in the movies. He enters into your form. And I knew at that moment, I said, this is God. And I was thankful at that moment that I'd done all this research and reading in the past, because I was able to identify. Now, God entered me in a way that I didn't expect, which he probably always does, but there was no doubt in my mind. And I drove down the road and everything was wonderful and everything looked beautiful. And I knew what it was. And the little Rick is over here watching this happen, because he knows what's going on. But what was amazing about this, and I just talked with Nook about this, is the big entity felt just like Rick. There was this little Rick and there was this astronomically huge Rick that was the higher self, which I didn't know. I had inclination. So I talked to Nook Sanchez about this recently. She said, that's exactly what your holy self is. Exactly what it is. So this entity, I don't know what it's called. What do you want to call it? Higher self. I loved everything. I couldn't make a wrong turn. Everything was beautiful. And I knew what was happening was he had cleared my crown chakra. He had done something to open it up.
He opened it. He opened it.
And I'll tell you what, there was no doubt. It went on for 3 days. And I told my girlfriend at the time, please listen to me carefully. I want to tell you clearly what happened with nothing extraneous. I want you to hear this clearly because I know that the cobwebs are going to come in later, sooner or later. And I'm not going to have this all the time. But from that moment on, I said, it's up to the which particular master you're dealing with, but the stuff is real. And 3 days later or so, I came back to normal and was very disappointed. But that was the greatest experience I've ever had.
You know, when people meditate, that's the experience they're trying to get to, right? But I discovered that if you go into your heart, there's your heart and there's your high heart. And I'm writing a book, an ebook right now on the high heart. And this is from what I've been told by my guides, this is where the soul is connected to the heart. And even though the pineal gland is, considered the seat of the soul, this is where you connect, where the heart connects to the soul. And so if you meditate from this spot, where you go into your place of love, when you're trying to meditate, you will really connect. I mean, it's a shortcut. You don't have to do all the breathing and squeezing up to get to the pineal gland, or pineal gland, or however you want to pronounce it. But this is the space right here. And if you want to get back to that energy, then meditating by going into your heart, and you can first send yourself love from in your body, within your body. Tell your body to send you love from your heart. The love that you can share with others, send it to yourself, because that's what we lack. Okay, that's a doorway that needs to be opened. When that doorway is opened, your stream of communication with the higher mind and the higher stream, really, that's when it really opens. And when you meditate or when you do Reiki, one of the 3 pillars, one of them is that you do what's called gas ho, which is where you put your thumb to your heart, you have your hands together here, and you put your intention at these the middle fingers where they're touching, and you meditate on being in that space where you feel the 2 fingers touching together. And then you attempt to experience the channel open, and you're connecting with the Reiki masters, you're connecting with the divine, and you're asking for blessings for yourself, and then you do this also then when you go into before a session with a client, where you're then bringing in blessings for the client, and you're asking for the guides to support you in the session, and you do it in closing. So there's a lot of, if everybody would follow that all the time, sometimes it's tough to do that because you might have 1 or 2 clients right after another, and you have to make it real quick and say, okay, thank you for that one, and help me with this one, so it's like a shortcut, but they get the point, right? And so they know I need shortcuts, and they cut me a lot of slack, I have to say.
And another thing that's interesting, a couple of little things before I open for questions. This Reiki device, this Healy device is an initial step between bringing science together with Reiki. I mean, there's so many stories of what's happening with the Healy, and it's being abused in some ways, being used in a confusing way in others. Other people are using it very well, but it's going to happen. We're going to start getting a fusion of the two different worlds. A couple of fast questions, Linda. What's difference between the Reiki 1, 2, and 3?
So they're all different attunement symbols that you receive. When you are attuned, you're actually breathing the symbol into the client, into their energy field. And that symbol is what the symbol that they work with for that level.
What do
Okay.
you mean by a symbol?
There are symbols, and you know, you could do them in the air. They're symbols that they're like Japanese symbols. Okay.
Oh, they're Japanese. Okay.
Like you see with these brush
Yep.
marks.
The other question I had for you was, yeah, that was about the symbols. Okay, very good.
So the first level is, you know, you're learning, you're attuned and you're open, and now you treat people, right? And that needs to go on for a while. You can do level 2 relatively soon, but I feel like you definitely need to practice level 1 for a while, because you need to learn to recognize the energy field and the communication that's happening between you and how do you read these energy fields? I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. You've been attuned, but your mind is still in there too. So you have to be able to assess. And that's part of level 1. And it's part of why you take your time at level 1. Level 2 is your remote work and also your self-healing work. And then level 3, like I said, it used to be very few people. I mean, Mrs. Takata, she came into the United States to train people. And in 10 years, she trained many, many people in Reiki 1, but she ended up only training 22 masters. So there really were never many masters until it hit mainstream in the United States. And now we're back at this, like, you can become a master, you know, like online in 5 minutes.
Very, very good. This is unbelievably good stuff. I was thinking of, well, I'll just pass on that one. Too many different things to get tributaries. Anybody got a question for Linda? I gladly connect the two of you. If you'd like to ask her a question, let's please keep it to questions so we can get some juicy answers. Yes, go ahead. Just unmute yourself, Claudia.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on with Linda. Use your mic. Put your mic closely.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Linda, I've actually been lucky enough to have Linda work on me and give me a Reiki session. It's been fabulous. Truly, truly just so beautiful and helpful. But my question to you was, for you as the facilitator, as you'd like to use that word, what is the difference between remote and when you're physically there with the person? I mean, I could imagine, but I want to kind of hear it from you in terms of how you tune into me or anybody else when you're not, I'm in another state.
So that's a really good question. Whenever you know, this is another reason why it's really good to develop all of these intuitive abilities at the first level, because once you start doing remote work, you're really sort of doing remote viewing, the way the military has people doing remote viewing. You know, you're really trying to move forward and connecting with that person as a soul, your soul with their soul, so that you can then scan and sort of read what they need and then begin sending to them. So for me, that really was not a problem, because like in the early 90s, my guides told me to start doing energy scanning around a person when I was reading, when I would do a live reading, an in-person reading. And so I still, even now when I do a reading, almost half of the session sometimes can be me, even remotely, me doing an energy scan on their body, and all the things that pop up. It might be medical, it might be past life, it might be a guide standing there, you know, it could be any one of those things. And actually Dr. Utsui used that, and he called it biosend scanning. So that was dropped by Mrs. Takata. And I think I think it's because it's a tough thing to teach. It's almost like that's part of intuitive training or intuition
Right.
training. And not everyone who does Reiki or is a Reiki practitioner is inclined to go in that direction. So maybe having that be part of it might have actually held back the ability for that to spread. But when you're in person, of course, you know, I'm picking up your energy field in person. I'm connecting with you. I think that you just connect a little bit differently, but I really feel that the end result is because when I send remotely now, I get people on a Zoom session, as you all know, and I have them replying and I have them turn the camera off, but we're connecting first. And you know, that is still frequency waves. We're still, I'm feeling you, right? I'm feeling you, you're feeling me. We're getting that connection.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's just a little bit different. Physical feels a little bit, you know, more social too. Right? A little more touchy-feely.
We had a question from Erica. Thank you, Claudia. Erica wants to know how long it takes to become an astrologer. Erica, it takes a long time.
No, I didn't want to ask that question. I was just saying that it takes a long time to become an astrologer, and that isn't even direct healing. So why would people think that they could just heal somebody, you know, just like that? It has to take a long
it's
time.
like anything else. You're just going to have
It's just
to.
a comment. But
I see.
I do have a question. Can I jump in line?
If it's a question, go ahead.
It is a question. How on earth does somebody give themselves Reiki?
I do it every day, put my hands on myself, and I, you know, just ask for the Reiki energy to come through. And I ask and I say where I would like to be directed. And my hands start to vibrate and the heat comes through and I can feel it in my body and I know that I'm receiving Reiki energy. So, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Anybody else got a question? Peggy, go ahead. Unmute yourself, dear. Then we'll go to Marcia next. Unmute yourself. Go ahead, Peggy.
Okay. I said, I heard a couple things. I'll just say they are, and then you tell me if it's right. One is if somebody has a broken bone, it hasn't been set. You don't want to do Reiki because their bones start knitting right away. One. Two, if they have cancer, you don't want to like think in green colors or something. It makes it worse or something like that. Does any of that make any sense? Yeah, I mean, you know.
So,
like if they're in an accident and they're all broken up and you want to do Reiki, you don't want their bones knitting, you know. I don't know.
I really haven't heard that.
Okay.
I will tell you that the person who sat in with my master teacher was another master teacher. They brought her in from Boston. They had two people in the room there. And she had an issue where she wanted to help people and so much that she kept showing up when there'd be a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept happening to her over and over. And it was like for a couple of years, she couldn't go through the month without 2 to 3 being at the scene of 2 to 3 car accidents.
Oh boy.
And until she put a stop to it, she stopped her intention. But what she was doing was she would stick with people and she would just create a sense of peace for them, around them, until the ambulance came or until the fire and rescue or whatever, the police would come. And she told me about one time that really stuck with her. And she said it was a multiple rear end incident. All these cars were, and so she knew that all these people had gotten whiplash, but most of them had gotten out of their cars. And they were waiting for the police to come, and she had them all sit in the grass, and a lot of other people stopped. She said it was a tremendous amount of people that stopped. And she like assigned one person to everybody, and she had them put their hands on the back of the person, you know, right under, like below the shoulders, right below the shoulders, had them put between the heart and the base of the neck. Mm-hmm. And And she just spoke out loud about a piece that they were receiving Reiki, and she channeled that through all these people. And she said that she realized that later on that they were in a circle, so that when the ambulance people came and the police came, when they got to the circle, they stayed back. They didn't rush in to grab anybody. They didn't interfere. They waited until she said, it's okay, you can come in the circle. Like they had that sense that there was something they were going to enter and they shouldn't. At a scene of an accident, was mind-boggling.
Well, with the cancer, what do you do with cancer?
I really try to help the person intention to heal from their source, whatever that may be,
Okay.
and ask their guides to come in, and maybe even I might receive an intuitive hit, or a clairvoyant hit about what can help them in terms of their diet, or where there might be an issue, or I might see psychic surgeons working on them, because that does happen
Okay.
from time to time. But first, a client would definitely want to be able to go back and do the heal, allow that energy to heal them from whatever that source. They're open to it. They have to be open to it.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, because people can block it. That's the thing. People don't deserve, they think they deserve. Some people think they don't deserve to be healed. And so if they believe that, there's a block in there. And the Reiki energy can only do so much. If the person says they want it, but they don't believe they deserve it, there's a block that needs to be worked out.
That makes sense. Marcia, thank you, Peggy. Marcia, you're on now with
Hi, Linda.
with Linda.
Marsha,
I've have many questions in my head to ask you, but how do you protect yourself?
good question. Good question.
Mm-hmm.
I, as a clairvoyant medium, I didn't know for many years that I could ask for a protective circle and put it around me every day. And I used to get everything. I mean, everything. And I said, I don't want this anymore. Why did you give this to me? And I tried to shut myself off for a number of years, until someone happened to tell me that you could protect yourself. Now, mind you, I was in my 20s, so I didn't realize that. It took me about 4 years of trying to shut everything down, because I was getting very deep, dark, I mean, everything. And I said, wait a minute, I don't want to be an exorcist, and I'm not qualified for this. I don't want to do this. Like, what are you doing? Send this to me, and I don't want it. So I now, the people that I attune to Reiki, I teach them to put a protective circle, or people I work with expanding their intuition. I work with people to do that as well. To really, I have a prayer that I developed, and my grandson who lives with me, we do it together every night before we go to bed. It's sort of like, it covers us for a long period of time, but we do it every day anyway. And I feel like I always have that protective circle around, because I visualize, as I ask for a circle of angels to come around and protect us, and protect our home and our property and ourselves, even when we're not together. And for that to continue every day. But I visualize, when I ask that, a circle of angelic beings coming down and creating that circle of light around me. And I feel that around me. And since I started doing that, I only had one short period of time where I had negative, what I would consider a lower level entity bother me. But I've had protection all these years because of that. And I also work with Jesus energy. I've studied all of the world religions. I've gone to most of the temples and synagogues and churches, and which I started doing when I was a teenager, actually, because of my personal experiences. And I was raised in the Catholic faith, but I had a lot of things that I just knew weren't right, and didn't sit right with me. And so that's when I started, studying world religions. But and it took me a long time to come back around to understand who Jesus was and bring him back to one day in my meditation, talking to him. I think it was the ultimate Reiki master. I feel that all the paintings of him with light coming from his hands, and it took me a couple years because when I was doing Reiki, I would get the vision of this painting that I knew from this church where he had his hands out and the light was coming down. And one day, and I would always have this vision when I would be accepting Reiki energy that I would put my hands up and I'm reaching up and connecting to that light coming out of his hands. And then one day I went like, oh, duh, that's Reiki energy, like it just hit me. It went off like a bell. And so then I started really more directly communicating with him. And one day while I was in meditation and while I was doing that one day, he came down next to me. Instead of being up in the sky, he came down next to me. And in that moment, I realized that he's my partner. He's my partner. I don't have to feel separated. I don't have to feel that he's this deity up in the sky, that I'm, he's my brother. He always said all men are brothers. We're brothers, right? I mean, and when I had that realization, it completely filled my heart, so overwhelmed. I had tears running down my face. Rick, I know exactly what you mean. And from that point on, in my meditation, I have been able to step into that experience in less than a minute anytime that I sit down and connect with him.
Marcia, do you have another question?
Yes, this is incredible. It's just beautiful to hear you talk about this. Our country is going through so much agony now. So many people are apart. Is there a way for this form of healing to help people on a more of a universal way instead of an individual way?
I am so glad you asked that, Marcia, because I was thinking about that the last several days. I think it's important that we create circles, that we facilitate circles. The more circles we can facilitate, the better. And I feel that it's important with a circle to have an intention. One of the things I've learned, and it's very powerful, if you have someone in your family or your friendship circle that you are on the outs with, or you have a problem communicating with that person, you can go and into yourself as a soul, into your heart, and connect with them, get a visual of them as here's their human side, here's their soul side. Their soul is perfect. Their soul can't be anything but perfect. The soul is still connected to the creator. The soul is part of creation, and it's flawless, and it will always be flawless. It's the human side that has the flaws. And how do we learn? We learn by our flaws. So as long as we're learning as we go, we shouldn't be beating ourselves up, right? But if you could connect with that person on a soul level and send them a message and say, look, not that you're trying to convince them to be otherwise. You want to be compassionate and say, as a soul, my soul accepts you, and I don't want to I don't want to hold you accountable for whatever is happening between us. I want you to know that I accept you, and I send you love from my soul to your soul. Whatever your wording might be. I will tell you that it will completely turn around that relationship. I mean, within days, you will notice a difference. And I have tried this myself, and I have seen it. I mean, really, just like that. And so what we can do as a group in circle is, for example, we might, look at the people that stormed the Capitol, all right, and say, look at them as souls and say, we understand that on your human side, you're feeling a lot of unresolved anger. Okay. And we want you to know that as light workers, we're sending you light for, awakening to your soul side so that your information can come into you through your higher mind. Okay. would be a very powerful thing. We can do that collectively for the mind and the soul of the people in our country, or the people in the world, you know, or for the planet.
Well, it's happening. Marcia, you got any more?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to get on to John. John has a question for you. Go ahead, John.
Hey, John.
I had an experience, and I think I know what it was, but I think you probably know the answer better. I had an experience once where I was totally exhausted and stressed out, and I was asleep, actually. I woke up and in this state, and I didn't think I could get up because I was so exhausted. But something happened. There was something like a big hose shooting energy onto me. And it was as strong as Niagara Falls. It was sort of like being struck by lightning, but it was the most gentle thing I've ever felt. And it just energized me. And I was on, totally energetic for days. I think that's maybe kind of what the energy is you're talking about, but maybe you know more about that kind of thing.
You received a blessing. You
Yeah.
received a blessing.
Great,
Absolutely.
Grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
A blessing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grace. Yeah.
Grace.
And honestly, John, it's because of the work you're doing, work in this world. You're clearly doing what you were called to do with your gifts, right? You're helping people. And whenever a soul is doing whatever their gifts might be, it might be providing music to people to uplift them. It could be, working in the legal realm and doing it from a place of compassion. That you really get tremendous support to keep you going, right? To keep you on that trajectory moving forward. So just be grateful and gratitude for that.
I've had so many clients tell me, for example, this one woman going through a divorce, ugly. She went out on her deck one day, it's about 3 or 4 years ago, and she just screamed to the heavens. I cannot take it anymore. She just screamed. And from that moment on, everything just got better and better and better and better and better. It all comes back continuously to us trying to figure it out. And we cannot figure out anything. We cannot figure out anything. Maybe how to open a combination lock. But every religion and every package and every therapy and every one you look at is continually about letting go and letting go and letting go and letting God and letting go. And without exception, they got different names, they got different words. Astrologers call different things. Healy people call it this. Everybody's got their different terms. And she's exactly right. And when you just get the hell out of the way, look what happens. And it ain't easy. And she's right. And tell us something if you know about this. There's a movement afoot for all of us to turn our Heelys towards the world. What's that about?
I'm sorry, say that again?
There are people talking online about everybody taking their Healy, turning it on at the same time and directing it towards the world's population. What's happening now? One second. What's happening? We're having astrological pressure unlike anything we've ever seen. Ever seen. There's nothing like what's going on. And now it's Pluto and Eris. And it's enormous pressure. And it really means get it together, or we've had to be driven to this point. We just have to take it to this point where we have to learn that our old ways are not working. And so I've seen a lot of Healy people, I don't know the exact details. They're talking about arranging a time, agreeing to a time where they get their Healys working on the mass consciousness. But, one of the things I want to say about astrology tonight is you're hearing a lot of talk now about people that are angry. They got this angry. They got this anger. They had been excluded. They don't want to be excluded anymore. It's perfectly understandable, and it is Eris. And it is time. But the thing is, we've just met each other. We just met each other in 1990, 1995. That's when the internet connected us. We had all these different cultures, and we very quickly have been thrown together. And that's really a split second time in the length of the universe. So we're just learning, but we all know what the real basis of all this is. And what's happening is we have to start allowing the institutions to be dismantled that are the institutions that hurt us, and start to re-provide new institutions that will heal us. And these kind of discussions are invaluable. Thanks to Linda.
Thanks to Rick. Thank you,
Thanks
Rick.
to all of you.
Well,
Thank-
you know, I mean, we are having, this is the Great Awakening. And, you know, with all of these opportunities showing up, it's almost like, hey, take your pick, what fits you, what suits you, what's going to help you open up and reconnect with your higher mind. You have all these options now. And we are in the dark night of the soul for the whole planet, really, I feel.
We definitely are.
And it's
the-
like, yeah.
And the secret is don't try to figure it out, because
Right.
you can't do it.
Yeah.
And in every situation I've heard, I don't want to put a word on it. Ask. How many times did you talk tonight about it? Reiki's totally dependent on it. The download. They're out there. They're trying to help us. It's out there. Whatever you'll call it. So let's just take this time to maybe take a moment and wrap things up. I mean, this is enough intellectual stuff. Linda, thank you so much for coming on board once again and educating us to fields that we weren't sure of, and enlightening us. And thank you again for bringing your light to the group. And once again, I want to thank
I would
everybody.
like,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would just like to, I would like to get like anybody put in the chat, I would like to know how many people are Reiki practitioners that are on here this evening. So I thought Jiao and Peggy. Yeah,
May I ask a quick question?
sure.
Yes. Who was your master? I'm curious because you talked about your lineage, and I actually picked up all my book studies and stuff to go look at my own lineage, and I wanted to double check.
So I'll read you the list because I have to keep it in front of me too. So it was Dr. Mikao Tsui, Dr. Hayashi, and then Mrs. Takata, Phyllis Furumoto, Linda Keller Martis, Nancy Murray.
Okay. Well, we diverged that Mrs. Takata went to Beth Gray, Reverend Faye Smith, Suzanne Proul, and then Evelyn Flurman. That was my
So
lineage.
you're very close up on the list too, isn't that? It's very, it's a blessing. Yeah.
It's a real blessing. Yeah, that's the word.
You feel the power of that.
Mm-hmm.
And think about, and just one thing there, Rick, I would like to add, which I wanted to mention earlier. Think about the thousands of people that might be signing up for an online attunement. And what lineage is that? Do you know what I mean? Like that, it's just blown. It's blown out of the water.
But just go ahead, Joe.
I just, I've met some people who claim to be studying Reiki and stuff, and some people do it online and stuff. And my heart sinks when I hear that. And I've met someone who, first of all, I already have an issue when people, instead of having 3 levels, which is what's the tradition, have 4 levels. I just like, okay, that's a money grab as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. And then I met somebody who between level 3 and then going to master, the teacher was talking about how they needed to do a year of therapy. And of course, she was going to be the therapist to work through their issues and unblock. And so, people need to be very careful where they're going.
If you go back to the story that Ram Dass talks about in Grist for the Mill, He was given a really nasty teacher in New York City. The woman was very powerful, but she had some negative qualities and she was really stealing the pupils' energy from them. But what he learned, and there's a reason for me telling this, what he learned is not to resist the teacher. There's so many people say, I'm not going there anymore. Did you hear what he said? Did you hear the kind of music he listens to? And I heard he was going, rah, 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 rah. He said, he taught us in his book, just go and keep your heart open, just like she's talking about, and have your intentions open. And what's good will come through, and what's bad will fall away.
Mhm.
So don't get worried about it. But we are really blessed to have this little group here and the myriad of groups around the country, because I don't know about you, but turn on my TV, I don't see much on TV it's going to heal us. But I'm so grateful for all of you that you keep coming back. We try to throw a little astrology in. We try to throw multi-talented people like Miss Varos in all the time, and all the different wonderful people we have. But I want to thank you all for tonight. And thank you. Keep at it. Keep at it. We've got to keep our spirits up. And we got to make everybody see that the old ways are not working. They're just not.
Yeah.
And that we know an awful lot. Yeah, I would be glad to give you her info. I'm sorry, I forgot. Let me get that to you before I forget once again. Here's Linda's contact information. And once again, want to thank you. Anything you'd like to say at the end there, Linda?
Oh, no, I just feel so blessed to be part of this group. This is a wonderful circle this evening, and many blessings on everybody, and stay healthy. Thank you again, Rick, for inviting me.
Thank you very much. We're going to have t-shirts and they're going to say, I have been unplugged on the front, and on the back, it's going to show the logo. And when they ask us what we're unplugged from, we say, I don't know, but I sure feel unplugged. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a good
you.
week.
Thank
Good week.
you.
Thank you.
Stay healthy, everybody.
Yep.
See you next week's astrology. See ya.
Yay.
Bye.